Continuing our call.
Kelsey at the control, scoop shot. Oh yeah!
Clark, bullseye! Who's it here? Boston pulls. He knocks it down.
Caitlin Clark. Are we having fun yet?
Mitchell, three ball.
We need to talk about everything happening around the WNBA All-Star announcement because the headline results and the surrounding context tell two completely different stories, and both of them matter enormously for understanding where this league actually stands right now. The confirmed news first. Caitlin Clark has been named to the WNBA All-Star roster for the third consecutive year. That selection is deserved, it is warranted, and it reflects what Clark has been doing on the court despite operating in circumstances that would have broken lesser competitors. She finished with 1,023,000 votes in the final fan voting tally. That is a significant number. That is a genuinely large audience of engaged fans expressing their preference through a formal process.
Caitlin, I know you mentioned that, you want to focus straight on basketball. Definitely respect that. But when, just asking you directly, when people use your name for racism, misogyny, whatever, what is your response to that specifically?
Yeah, I think it's disappointing. I think, everybody in our world, deserves the same amount of respect. The women in our league deserve the same amount of respect. So people should not be using my name to push those agendas. It's disappointing. It's not acceptable. But yeah, I mean, this league is a league I grew up admiring and wanting to be a part of. Like, some of the women in this league were my biggest idols and role models growing up and helped me want to achieve this moment right here that I get to play in every single night. So just treating every single woman in this league with the same amount of respect, I think is just a basic human thing that everybody should do. Like, just be a kind person and treat them, how you would want to be treated. And I think it's, very simple.
And yet, Paige Bueckers finished ahead of her by approximately 22,000 votes. Let that sit next to everything we know about the commercial and cultural landscape of this league right now. Clark fills arenas. Clark drives merchandise revenue at a scale that has transformed franchise economics across the sport. Clark generates television ratings that this league had never seen before her arrival. The fan base that has organized around Clark is demonstrably massive, deeply engaged, and historically unprecedented in the context of women's professional basketball. And Paige Bueckers, whose games do not consistently generate anything approaching the viewership numbers that Clark's games produce, finished 22,000 votes ahead of her in fan balloting. This outcome demands honest examination, and the examination starts with a simple and direct question. Does the fan voting process that produced this result reflect genuine, verifiable public engagement, or does it reflect something else? The question is not manufactured outrage. It is a reasonable analytical response to a result that does not align with any observable measure of relative fan engagement between these two players. When you look at broadcast viewership, at merchandise sales, at arena attendance patterns, at social media engagement metrics, at the commercial interest that sponsors, broadcasters, and advertisers have shown in association with each player's profile, there is no data point that suggests Bueckers commands a fan voting constituency that would produce a result like this in an honest, open competition with Clark. The league owes its fans a transparent and detailed accounting of how the voting process works, what safeguards exist against manipulation or coordination, and why the results deviate this significantly from every other available measure of comparative fan engagement. That explanation should be provided proactively and with specificity. The credibility of the voting process is a real institutional asset, and institutional assets require maintenance. Allowing the perception of irregularity to persist without clear and verifiable explanation is a choice with real consequences for public trust. Now let us turn to the player vote, because this is where the story shifts from questions about institutional process to something that is entirely transparent and entirely damning. WNBA players voted Caitlin Clark as the 11th best guard in the league. Not the second, not the fifth, not the 7th, 11th. Clark is currently second in the entire WNBA in assists. She is tied for 4th in points. She is averaging numbers across a full season that no player in this league's history has sustained for even a 30-day stretch. Not 30 days, the entire season. And her peers, the players who watch her every game, who face her on the court and understand exactly what she is capable of, voted her 11th among guards. The media ranking placed her 3rd. The official voting placed her 2nd. The players placed her 11th. That gap is not analysis. It is not a product of legitimate disagreement about stylistic preferences or positional philosophy or team construction considerations. A gap of that magnitude between what the observable statistics say, what media assessors determined through professional evaluation, and what the players voted represents something that has a name. It is resentment. It is the continuation of a cultural dynamic within this league that has been documented, discussed, and called out repeatedly by players like Courtney Williams, journalists like Christine Brennan, and the broad audience that has been watching this situation unfold in real time. And then there is Sophie Cunningham, whose omission from the All-Star roster is a separate but related concern. Cunningham is leading all WNBA players in three-point shooting percentage. She became one of the most recognizable figures in women's basketball this season through a viral moment that generated over 100 million views globally. She has been productive, visible, and by statistical measure, elite in her specific area of contribution. The fact that she finished 15th in the voting and did not crack the top 10 is, by any honest assessment, surprising and suspicious. The voting mechanics that produced a result this disconnected from her documented performance and visibility deserve the same scrutiny being applied to the Clark result. Now let us discuss Raven Johnson, because this dimension of the story reveals something important about the internal dynamics of Clark's fan base and the league's relationship with that base. Johnson is Clark's Indiana Fever teammate. She shared content celebrating Clark's All-Star selection, expressing support for her colleague's achievement. It is the most natural and normal thing a teammate can do. It is what teammates do in professional sports when one of their own earns recognition. It requires no explanation, no defense, and no justification beyond the basic human instinct to support the people you work alongside. And yet Johnson received negative attention online for doing it. This is where the situation becomes genuinely uncomfortable to navigate, because it requires holding two things simultaneously. The first is that harassment directed at anyone for celebrating a teammate's accomplishment is wrong. Full stop, regardless of who the target is or what the circumstances are. That position requires no qualification. The second is that this incident directly contradicts the narrative that has been constructed by various players and commentators, suggesting that Clark's fan base is uniformly hostile toward other WNBA players. You cannot simultaneously argue that Clark's fans are the problem, that they are consistently the source of negative energy directed at people in this league, and also explain why those same fans have been visibly supportive of players who show genuine appreciation for Clark. The players who have supported Clark publicly, who have spoken honestly about her talent and expressed genuine enthusiasm for her success, have consistently received warmth rather than hostility from her fan base. The negative online behavior has not been directed at players for supporting Clark. It has appeared in other contexts, in other situations, often involving different provocations and different dynamics. The Raven Johnson situation, if the harassment she reportedly received came from people who objected to her celebrating Clark, exposes an ugliness that has no defense and deserves no platform. But if it came from a different direction entirely, from people within the league's existing fan community who resented her visible support of Clark, that tells a completely different story about where the toxic energy in this ecosystem actually originates. That distinction matters. It matters for understanding what is actually happening and who is actually responsible for the hostility that everyone agrees is present and corrosive. The broader picture being painted by all of these simultaneous developments is one of a league experiencing a profound internal contradiction. On one side sits Caitlin Clark, who is producing historically unprecedented statistical output, generating commercial momentum that is entirely without precedent in the history of this sport, and attracting a fan base willing to invest time, money, and emotional commitment in women's professional basketball at a level never before seen. On the other side sits a voting process that produced a result disconnected from verifiable fan engagement metrics, a player vote that places her 11th among guards, despite statistical standing that makes that ranking objectively absurd, and an internal culture that generates negative energy toward teammates simply for celebrating her achievements. The league's management of these contradictions will define what it becomes next. There is also a transparency issue that deserves direct address. The WNBA has not been consistently releasing viewership numbers in a way that allows for clear, public, independent verification of what audiences are watching and in what volume. This opacity is not a minor administrative inconvenience. It is a significant institutional failure in an environment where the evidence of Clark's commercial impact is the single most powerful argument for why this league deserves the investment and attention it is currently receiving. If the viewership numbers support the narrative of growth and commercial expansion that Clark has enabled, those numbers should be published prominently and frequently. The reluctance to make them readily available raises questions that the league should not want people asking. Transparency is not a weakness. It is the tool through which credibility is built and maintained. A league that has something genuinely impressive to show should be showing it clearly and continuously. The combination of voting questions, player ranking patterns, the Raven Johnson situation, the viewership transparency issue, and the ongoing institutional management of Clark's environment within Indiana creates a comprehensive picture of an organization that has not resolved its fundamental relationship with the player who is driving its most commercially significant moment. Clark has been named an All-Star for the third consecutive year. That recognition is real and it is deserved. But the context surrounding it is a catalog of institutional choices that reflect an ongoing failure to fully embrace and protect what Clark represents. The player who is second in assists, tied for fourth in points, averaging numbers no one in league history has sustained even briefly, producing commercially transformative results across every measurable category, finished 11th in the player vote. The league that benefits from everything she brings voted her 11th. That is the real story of the All-Star announcement. And the audience that has been paying attention knows it.